Hello world! Welcome to Learning Java, one byte at a time. This is video 27 in a tutorial series geared at bringing the wonderful wide world of Java to those with little or no programming experience. This video is a continuation of the development of the application called Booker, which is a vehicle appraisal application. In the last video, we did a unit test of the vehicle class to ensure it's properly producing vehicle objects and everything seems to be working correctly, so we can move forward with the development of the advertisement class. Now, the advertisement class is going to be in charge of returning the content for the sales ad that's going to be displayed to the user at the end of the appraisal process. But it's going to be a little bit more complicated than simply writing an advertisement class, because we're going to be following a design pattern called factory design pattern. And what factory design pattern allows us to do is offload some of the logistics from the controller to its own class file. That particular class file, which will be the factory class, will sort through the criteria, and then it itself will make a call to the particular advertisement class needed to return that particular advertisement object. And then in turn it bounces that object back to the controller, and the controller can use the getters and setters to access the content of the ad as it sees fit. This is a great design pattern in that it allows us to scale the application more easily and efficiently. We can make changes or additions, and we can sort of decentralize that logic to its own class file to make it simpler for us to just read. And so in doing that, we're going to have a couple of different files associated with this. First, we want to jump into the Notepad++, and I want to show you the text file that I have that's going to be the source of the content of the sales ads. And so we have three different classes of vehicles. We have a utility class, a sports class, and a luxury class. And it would be nice if our application could tailor the sales ad to the class of the vehicle. And so you want to make sure that the sales ad that's eventually returned to the user looks a little bit different based on the class of the vehicle. And so in this text file, I have here a single line that's going to be the single advertisement content. And eventually this text file will have all three of the advertisements. And you can see here that I have in brackets generic property names of the vehicle. The reason being is that we don't know for sure what the user is going to define as a vehicle, and we want to sort of keep it generic. But we do know that it's going to be geared towards in this case, a sports vehicle. And so it says meet, and then in brackets, name. And then it says, feel the wind in your hair as you speed down the highway in this blazing fast, and then year, make, and model. And then it goes on to talk more about the vehicle while leaving those particular properties of the vehicle blank. Eventually, we're going to have a parser object that goes through and parses this string content and fills in the blanks with whatever the user defined as the vehicle. But as we don't know what that's going to be yet, we're going to leave it blank for now. So imagine this text file as containing, line by line, every one of the different classes of vehicles' sales ad content that we'll eventually make a call to. And the reason that we have it all in one line is because of the nature of the file reader that we're going to be using, and the fact that we're going to be storing these in an array list. We want to make sure that the first line is going to be stored as index 0, the second line will be stored as index 1, and the third line will be stored as index 2. And each one of those indexes will have a correlation to what class of vehicle they belong to. And so now, beginning with the design of the factory design pattern, we're going to go ahead and start with the interface. And so the interface is going to be called advertisement.java. It's going to be the basic advertisement class. But as it's an interface, it's not going to in itself be called, because we know that the luxury, utility, and sports class vehicles all have something in common. They all need to set advertisement content, and they all need to get advertisement content. And so we can sort of offload that to an interface class and simply have each one of those particular classes inherit from this. And so the advertisement.java is going to be the interface that we're going to use. We're going to declare that every advertisement class needs to have these basic methods implemented, and then we're going to write them separately. And so what that looks like is by first declaring that it's part of the package Booker so that the JVM knows how to properly compile this. We're going to declare this as a public interface called advertisement. And in this interface, we're going to have two methods that every advertisement class must implement. And that's going to be a public string called getAdvertisement content and a public void called set advertisement content. And that's essentially it. Because we don't want to actually get into the specifics in the interface, we're going to leave those blank. These two methods are going to be overridden and then redefined in the actual sports advertisement class or luxury advertisement class or utility advertisement class. And so it's sort of like a contract saying, if you are an advertisement class, at the bare minimum, you must implement these two methods. These two methods must be present for you to even be part of this class. And so once this is done, we can save that. We can jump in here to the example that I have provided, which is going to be the first advertisement class that we're going to write, called the sports advertisement. And so sports advertisement is going to inherit, or it's going to implement, the advertisement interface. So first we need to make sure that it's part of the Booker package, so we're going to declare that right there. We're going to make a brief import because we're going to be making use of an array list, and the array list is an object in the collections, which is part of the java.util. So we'll implement java.util.ArrayList right there. And an array list is sort of like an array, except it is mutable, which means we can change its length, we can rearrange the objects inside of it, and the only cost that we have is that it's a little bit slower to index. But that's okay, because we're not going to have very many elements in the array, and the cost is worth the gains that we get from being able to have a mutable object. So now we'll start by declaring the public class as sport advertisement, and we're going to implement the advertisement, if I can spell, the advertisement interface right there. So now in implementing the advertisement interface, the first thing we have to do is we must override those two methods, because as it stands now, those two methods don't have any content to them. All we know is that we have to follow the contract of the interface, and we have to have those there. So we're going to use the annotation override, and this tells the JVM that we are in fact overriding the methods in the interface as necessary. And this is going to be, the first one is going to be, as we know, the public string get advertisement content, like so. And then we're going to need to also override the public void, if I can type, public void set advertisement content, like so. And this is going to accept a string called advertisement content. And it will return, or it will not return, it will actually set whatever that particular instance of the object is to the advertisement content, like so. Okay, so we've done the bare minimum necessary to make the implementation of the interface. We've overridden both of the methods necessary. Now it's a simple matter of actually populating the methods. Oh, and we know that this one is going to return the string, and the string is going to be advertisement content. All right, so now we know that the sports advertisement class and the luxury and utility advertisement classes are going to be pretty much identical to what we have right here. The only difference is what they're going to set and what they're going to return as being the particular content, and that content is going to be sourced from this text file, depending on which line they're pulling from and how these properties get parsed in to the specifics of the vehicle object the user creates. So now jumping back to the sports advertisement class, we're going to need to have some advertisement content, so let's set a private string that we'll call advertisement content, and then we're going to need our constructor, which is going to be, as we know, named after the class. So we're going to construct a sport advertisement object, and this is going to accept two things. We're going to need a vehicle object that we'll call vehicle, and from that we're going to strip away all of the properties of the particular vehicle so that we can parse those into the sales ad content. We're also going to need a double called appraisal, and this is going to be the final value returned from the Blue Book calculator, and it's going to end up as the price of the object, and the price is going to be put into the sales ad as well. You can't have a sales ad without a price. Now in this, we're only going to have a few lines of code here. We need to define an array list that we've imported, and this array list is going to be comprised of strings. This array list is going to be pulled from the text file, and then we're going to iterate it to pull which one of those lines we're going to need depending on whether it's utility, sports, or luxury. So this array list of strings that we're going to call the template advertisement file is going to be set equal to the file reader that reads that file. And so we know that we're going to need to have a database access object class that we're going to write, and in that class we're going to have a method called load data, and where we're going to get that data from is going to be the advertisement.txt that we've already seen. This DOA class and this load data method we'll write in just a moment. And then when we do the unit test, we'll figure out a fun little way to kind of get through that without having to write that. But in the meantime, we know this is what the final version is going to look like. And then we're going to need to define a string called simply template advertisement. And we're going to set that equal to whatever we were able to pull from the advertisement.txt. And since it's an array list, we're going to use the get to access the index. And in the case of the sports advertisement content, that's going to actually be index number 1. It's going to be the second line of the text file in the end. Now that we have pulled into an array list the 3 types of advertisement contents from advertisement.txt and set a string equal to one of those in the array list determined on which class of vehicle it is. So in sports, it's going to be index 1, utility will be index 0, luxury will be index 2, so on and so forth. It's then just a matter of using the setter we've defined to set the advertisement content equal to whatever it is that we pulled from the text file. However, we also know that we're going to need to populate that string content with the actual specifics of the vehicle. And this is going to be done with a class that we'll write a little bit later called Populate Advertisement, and that class will have a method called parse advertisement, and it's going to accept an argument that's going to be the template advertisement, the vehicle object, and the final appraisal price, like so. All right, now this class is pretty much done. The only thing that we have left to do is to write the Advertisement Factory class. And so if we clean this up just a little bit, like so, we'll save that file, and then we'll jump over here to the actual factory class. And the factory class is going to be easier than you think. First, of course, we are going to include it in the package, like so. Then we're going to declare the class as Advertisement Factory. And then this is going to be where we use the criteria to determine which of the advertisement classes we're going to be returned. So we have a public static advertisement get advertisement method. And so this is going to be public and static because we're going to want the controller class to be able to have access to this. It's static because we're not going to actually instantiate the advertisement factory. We're going to call it right from the class itself because we don't make instances of the factory. We use the factory to get instances of other advertisement objects. It's going to return an advertisement object, which is what we want. And as a criteria, it's going to need to know the vehicle and the appraisal because it's going to need to pass those on to the classes that it calls. So inside here, we're going to have a string called advertisement type. We're going to set that equal to the vehicle, and we're going to just need to call the vehicle class. So we need to know what class of vehicle is this. Is it luxury, sport, or utility? And determining on that will be the advertisement type. And then using the criteria of the advertisement type, we can define a switch statement. The switch statement, much like the if-then statement, except it's going to be a case selector of more than just 2 options. We're going to switch based on the advertisement type and basically tell Java that in the case of type utility, return a new instance of the utility. If I can type utility advertisement class, passing once again the vehicle and the appraisal. In the case of sport, we'll do the same thing, return a new instance of the sport advertisement. Again, it needs the vehicle and the appraisal to generate that content. And in the case of luxury, return a new luxury advertisement. And in the case that something goes wrong and it doesn't fit any of those criteria, we'll have a default option where we return null. And then we'll check for a null return, and we'll know that something went wrong, and we'll let the user know that there was some sort of error. All right, and I'll just clean this up, make this look a little bit nicer. And that's essentially how the switch statement works. It's just a lot like an if-then statement, except it's a little bit more detailed in the criteria. So now we have the Advertisement Factory. It's going to whenever it's called, it's going to always return an advertisement object. The type of advertisement object that it returns is going to be based on whatever vehicle was passed through and the type of class of that vehicle. And then using a little bit of logic here, it's going to return an instance of the utility advertisement, the sports advertisement, or the luxury advertisement object in the form of an advertisement object. And because we're implementing this interface called advertisement, it doesn't matter whether or not the sports advertisement or utility or luxury advertisement are called. We know that it's always going to be an advertisement object return, and that's what sort of makes the interface nice. And the fact that we've offloaded this logic from the controller to a factory class decentralizes some of that, and it makes that kind of nice. And then this whole application can scale a lot quicker and easier, because if we decide that we want to add more classes of vehicles, or if we decide that we want to have different types of sales contents for each particular class of vehicle, we're able to add that in without it affecting the controller file and thus affecting the whole application at large. And so this has been enough, I think, for one video. We'll come back again in the next video and we'll run some unit tests on this to make sure that this is working correctly. Hopefully all of this was clear, and just like always, this entire application is going to be available on a GitHub link that's going to be in the description. Feel free to access that if you need further information. Of course, like always, questions and comments are welcome. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back again in the next video. Have a wonderful night.